Hi, I'm Shannon, and thank you for joining me. I've been in the cybersecurity industry, specifically consulting, for a decade now, and I got started in the industry working in a penetration testing organization. And my initial focus was on application security testing, later expanding to network, infrastructure, hardware, and physical penetration testing. Now, I've worked at a handful of cybersecurity consulting organizations over the past decade with hundreds of clients at this point, which encompass just about every major industry vertical and size of company, from small and medium business to large enterprise companies. The verticals included have been communications, technology, financial services, of course, healthcare, automotive, gaming, utilities, food and beverage, e-commerce, and there's a few more that are thrown in there. So my team went from performing transactional testing for a single web or mobile application to then performing testing for multiple applications, and then later to really kind of expand to larger security testing programs, primarily focused on AppSec, really expanded to test hundreds of applications per year for clients and their application portfolios. And mind you, that wasn't even all of them, but they began to expand those programs further to encompass, again, network infrastructure testing, wireless, and then physical pen testing, as well as red team engagement. I'm sure you're thinking, well, so what, Shannon? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Here's the pattern that I began to notice that unfolded for me over the course of multiple years that I really wanted to share with you. And again, this is across multiple clients and sizes of companies and industries. So are you ready for it? Because here it is. Pen testing did not prevent security incidents or breaches from happening. Shocker. Let me tell you why. Think of pen testing like you would getting an x-ray. If there was suspicion that there's a physical bone that was broken in your body, that x-ray is an extremely important part of the process to diagnose the problem, but that x-ray itself does not fix the problem. So the same is true for pen testing. It's a required part of the process, yes, absolutely. It gives visibility and transparency, which likely wasn't there before. It also provides awareness for the vulnerabilities that exist and if they can be exploited. But let me tell you what it isn't. So pen testing in and of itself is not going to save you. This merely provides you with insight to potential problems in your environment. So think of this as step one: identification of vulnerabilities and likelihood of exploit, awareness. So if penetration testing is just step one, then step two is going to be determining if the issue needs to be remediated. And if that answer is yes, determining the right remediation strategy and the details associated with it to take action on it to fix it. This is where perhaps your infrastructure team comes into play, perhaps development team, your DevOps team, architecture or design team, perhaps come in and address the activities that need to take place. And again, that's going to vary. It really depends on what the issue is or issues that determine how it gets handled. So there are other factors as well, especially if this is already in production. If it is, there is definitely going to be some level of impact on the business and how that operates and or revenue generation. So there's time, energy, and resources that are going to be needed to invest. Does this step always happen? Absolutely not. This has been by far one of the more painful things I have seen in my career in which pen testing was done. It was proven that a full compromise of the environment was possible, and companies still ended up in the media for a breach which took place the exact same way as it did during their pen testing engagement many months prior. So some companies are definitely better at it than others. Some industries, such as financial services, are definitely better at it than others. But I'm sure you're asking yourself, but why? It seems so simple, just fix it. Well, I'm glad you asked. It's not that simple. Pen testing is often a mandatory requirement for compliance and regulation. So for many companies, it is an activity that must take place in order for an organization to achieve or maintain this. Here are the things that are not mandatory requirements. The first one is having competent people within their organization that have the knowledge and the experience to take appropriate action to address the vulnerabilities that are identified from the pen testing activities. Number two is addressing the issues in a timely manner. And how do you define timely? Historically, companies have not always had to worry about this. Their expertise is obviously in their industry in building their products and or services. Most companies are not cybersecurity experts, nor do they have them on staff. I already shared that there are companies that do not always address the findings that they know exist that are notably impactful. Why? Well, because we're all dealing with similar challenges, both in life and business. It is called priorities and making the most of your time and resources. We all get pulled in various directions and have constraints. The struggle is real. We've covered step 1, which again is awareness, the pen testing in and of itself. Step 2, which is remediation, which again may or may not happen, and even if it does, doesn't guarantee that it's the best remediation strategy or implementation. And now on to step number 3, which is continuous security integration. What I have experienced over time for my clients and still see today, quite honestly, for the majority of companies, is a focus on point-in-time security testing only. For those that do actually remediate, which is a subset of those that even have pen testing performed, many of them would fix and then move on. So after years of testing, as an example, the same applications over and over, they noticed that the trends didn't have much of a drastic change. Was there change or improvement? Yes. Was it earth-shattering? Not so much. Well, why not? Well, because identifying vulnerabilities continues to happen, often during the QA or testing process or when already released in production. The act of taking what was learned through those findings, such as business logic failures, configuration issues, or design issues, for example, were not being reflected on after addressing them to then go back and make modifications and improvements. It was really fix it and move on to the next thing. There often is little to no proactive action being made to look for certain known and susceptible issues earlier in the process, which is what led me to a heavier focus in my career to helping my clients be more proactive and integrating or attempting to integrate security activities into the product lifecycle. If clients are continuously up against the same vulnerabilities on a regular basis, the firefighting never really ends, but it can be more palatable. What you learn from your pen testing can be incorporated into things such as developing threat scenarios and abuse cases, identifying a new class of threat actor that perhaps you didn't have to think about before. Perhaps it could be an inadvertent action that an employee can take that some may learn about the hard way. Changes in your design, proactive activities that can be done during the build process instead of waiting until testing or even worse, post-release. So there are many ways to begin making small changes and improvements despite what is happening in the market. I promise you we're all dealing with it. There are budget reductions, headcount reductions that are happening. It is more important now than ever to be resourceful and to identify what is within your control that you can change and influence. This can be through process changes, security training, security tool training. I have a whole other video that I'll be posting on this alone. Leveraging security tool licensing perhaps from another team. You can get creative. Every inch towards improvement helps to bring you closer to huge changes over time. I truly hope this has provided some insight and food for thought at a minimum. We, the collective we, have a long road ahead of us to continue making an impact and forward progress. But like many others, we know it's an effort worth fighting for and the impact is significant. So thank you for joining me and be on the lookout for the next video. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.